Hello and welcome back. This is another 5th and 6th grade exponents video where today we're going to be focusing on how to evaluate exponents that have decimal bases. Okay, here is our first example. We're going to evaluate the exponent 0.6 to the third power. Okay, so if you haven't seen some of my previous videos on how we evaluate exponents, you may want to see that, or how we write exponents as a multiplication expression. So you may want to go and check that out before this one. So 0.6 to the third power. We're going to start by rewriting this as a multiplication expression. In order to do that, we use the exponential number, which is this number right here, to tell us how many times we are multiplying the base times itself. Since that says 3, I'm going to have 3 lines here, and I'm going to put a multiplication symbol in between each pair of lines. Now, the base is what we are multiplying. So this is going to be 0.6 times 0.6 times 0.6. Okay, so now if you want to go ahead and do 0.6 times 0.6 first, and then take that and multiply it by the other 0.6, you are more than welcome to do that. As I know, when I'm multiplying decimals, the method I use is usually to ignore the decimals, multiply the numbers, and then place the decimals. So that's what I'm going to show you for this video. But if you're more comfortable with doing 0.6 times 0.6 first, getting that answer, and then multiplying it by the other 0.6, that is totally fine. So like I said, I'm going to ignore these decimals. I'm going to multiply 6 times 6 times 6. Well, 6 times 6 is 36. And then if I multiply it by this other 6, I end up getting 216. So now here's where the decimal comes in. What I'm going to do is put a decimal at the end of my multiplication answer. I'm going to need to move it to the left the same number of places as I had decimals in the original problem. So in my original problem, I had 1, 2, 3 numbers that were in decimal place values. That means I need to move this decimal 1, 2, 3 spaces and put it right there in front of the 2. So 0.6 to the third power is the same as 0.216. Okay, here is our next one. We're going to multiply or evaluate the exponent 0.5 to the second power. So again, that exponential number tells me how many times I'm multiplying. Since that's a 2, I'm going to put 2 lines with a multiplication symbol in between. The base is what tells me the number that's going to get multiplied. So I'm going to put 0.5 here and 0.5 here. So now I'm going to use a little shortcut to do this in kind of off the top of my head. Again, if you need to write it out 0.5 times 0.5 and do it that way, that's totally fine. Well, 5 times 5 is 25. And then I'm going to put a decimal at the end of my multiplication answer. I'm going to move it to the left the same number of spaces as I had decimals in my original problem. So that would be 2, because I had 2 digits in the decimal place value. So I'm going to move this 2 spaces and put it right here. So 0.5 to the second power is the same as 0.25. Okay, here's my next example. I'm going to evaluate the exponent 0.2 to the second power. So again, that little exponential number tells me how many times I'm multiplying. And 0.2, or the base, is what number I'm multiplying. So I'm going to do 0.2 here and 0.2 here. So using the shortcut, I'm going to do 2 times 2, which is 4. Place a decimal at the end of that multiplication answer. And then I'm going to move it to the left to the same number of spaces as I had decimals in my original problem. So my original problem had 1, 2 decimals. So I'm going to move this 2 spaces and put it here. Now, if I create an empty space when I do that, I fill in that empty space with a 0. So 0.2 to the second power is the same as 0.04. Okay, here is our next example. We're going to take 3.3 and evaluate it to the first power. So again, that little exponential number tells me how many times I am multiplying. Since that's a 1, I'm just going to put 1 space. Then I'm going to take the base and put it on that space, 3.3. Now you may have noticed I've got nothing to multiply it by. So that means 3.3 to the first power is 3.3. That would be true of any base to the first power. If you have x to the first power, your answer is going to be x. If you have 50 to the first power, your answer is going to be 50. If you have 379 to the first power, your answer is going to be 379. So any base to the first power is just that base. Okay, here is our last example for today's video. We're going to take the exponent 0.27 and bring it to the third power. Okay, so that means the little exponential number tells us how many times we're multiplying. So I'm going to do 3 lines and put multiplication symbols in between each. The base tells me what number goes on the line. So that's going to be 0.27 times 0.27 times 0.27. Okay, now ignoring the decimals, I'm going to multiply 27 times 27 times 27, which is a lot of work. But once I am done with it, I should end up with 19683. Okay, so that's what I should end up with. Okay, so now I'm going to place a decimal at the end of that multiplication answer, and I'm going to move it to the left the same number of spaces as I had decimals in the beginning of this problem or in my multiplication problem. So if I go and count, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimals in this problem. So I need to move this decimal 6 spaces to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So by doing that, I created an empty space. And when that happens, you put in a 0 in that empty space. So my final answer is that 0.27 to the third power is 0.01968. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you in another video soon.